I'd like to circle back to this concept that in an F1 race, the strategy is all set before the race. So that doesn't give you a lot of flexibility during the race to adjust to surprises and perhaps other people's strategy. So how does that all play out?
Yeah, no, there's very, very little surprise in strategy in Formula One. You have like plan A, B, C, and D prior to the race with different stops, and tire you're gonna put on, like tire compounds, soft, medium, or hard. But it's all predetermined on Sunday morning prior to the race. So that's why you very often see a lot of people doing the same thing.
But if you know the other teams really well, you kind of know the strategies that they employ. And so isn't it sort of hard to out-strategize or maneuver your opponents if it's so, I don't want to say it's rigid, but it's so sort of pre-formed before the race?
Well, the problem is that you know exactly your tire wear, you know your tire degradation. So are you losing a tenth of a lap or using 100 per lap? You know you can make 30 or 40 laps on the tires, and then you put that all in the simulation and it's going to give you the fastest race time. And that's what everyone's going for, because at the end, it's 305 kilometers. That every Formula One race is about the same, apart from Monaco, which is 250. How can you get that distance the fastest? And everyone tends to go that way.
So that's fascinating to me that they're doing simulations actively during the race. Is there any artificial intelligence creeping into that, or is it sort of formulaic?
No, they're using it more and more. They're using all technology that they can use, as much data as they can use. You know, they put the everything, all the climatics, environment, air pressure, temperature, chance of rain, how many laps were done, and the simulation keeps evolving, because sometimes you go in a race thinking you're gonna lose 2/10 a lap on tire degradation, and you end up only losing a tenth per lap. So that completely changes your strategy of how far you can go. So that's what they're monitoring. They look at the tire temperature. When the tire temperature starts to drop, that means you're running out of rubber, and that means you're getting close to running out of tires. So they have all those data going into the computer, and the thing runs 1,000 simulations per minute and come up with, at any time, the best outcome.
Wow, that's amazing.
So when we're our dynamic flight time of flying in shuttle is up and down, during launch and reentry, and we've got to react in an instant if there's something that goes wrong. So we've got these checklists that you immediately go to based on certain failures and so forth. Do you have things like that in the car, and if things can go wrong in the car during a race when you're like flying through along the track at some incredible speed? How do you manage those kinds of failures or those kind of contingencies when things aren't going so well?
That's where you have the team and the radio, and they basically tell you what to do. Fail Foxtrot 39, okay, or whatever. One of the very common problem we have is we lose a wheel speed sensor. And you're going to say, well, it doesn't really matter. You don't have a speedometer in the car. No, but the gearbox has got sync gears and synchronized gear. And if you lose a wheel speed sensor, they don't know where they are anymore. So the gearbox cannot do the seamless shift. And you lose about a second per lap. So you very quickly have to disable that sensor. So the gearbox reads out of the other one and don't take that into account. So that happens very, very often.
So they have the contingency list.
Yeah, they do, yeah.
So let's talk about Bahrain. I don't know if you like reliving that very often, but in 2020, you probably had one of the most shocking crashes of the modern era. Yeah. How did that happen? What was going through your mind? And how did you get out of that car?
Well, I pulled myself out of it as much as I could. It took me a little longer than it should have, for my wife, for my kids, for my hands. Took me 28 seconds, I think, to jump out of that car. It was stuck under a guardrail, and there was a very, very tiny place for me to jump out. So what's happening through your head is that you don't want to die and you want to survive, and you have to find a solution. So I guess you'd never know if you have a survival instinct or not until you discover that you have one. And I think I do.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That's amazing. So, how did you go about rebuilding your confidence, or did you even have to?
There was always, I was in my hospital bed, and the first target was to race the week after. But that became very clearly that was not going to be possible. So then it was 2 weeks after, there was the last race in Formula One, and I tried everything I could to go to that race until the doctor told me, yes, potentially you can, but if anything happens on your hands or any, we may have to remove your hand from your body. So at that point, I was like, well, maybe it's not worth it, and I'll wait a few months before I jump back in a race car. But I kind of told my friend and family that I was maybe going to take a break. That was a lie, just to make them feel better.
That's good.
Yeah, I was never going to stop.
So you've had a pretty decently long career, obviously migrating into the pinnacle of the sport in several areas. How has your approach to taking risk changed? I'm just guessing here that when you were younger, there was more of a go for it attitude, and now that you're older, you might give a guy an extra inch at 200 miles an hour that you might not have given when he was younger. Any reflections on that as you've gotten more experienced?
I don't think I give him more inch. What I think is that I think more about making a move, but once I've decided that and committed to a move, that hasn't changed. I think there's nothing worse than going halfway through something. That's where you have problems. Either you commit, either you bait out of it, but in between is never good.
That's always a bad place to be. Yeah. So we've talked already about the fact that you've raced, between IndyCar, F1, and others, and you just completed the Rolex 24-hour race in Daytona. So can you talk a little bit about the different culture of competition and safety and so forth between these different series and pros and cons, or how well it works?
Yeah, I've started doing endurance racing in 2022, I think. I've actually done it in 2010, but back at it in 22. And it's very different because you share the car with 2 or 3 more teammates. And it's not about pure performance for yourself, right? You have to go fast, but it's how the whole crew goes fast. And I may like a car that is very specific in one way. My teammate may not like it. So it's all about compromise and creating a team that work well together. It's fantastic when you manage to do that. It's just a great feeling. And 24 hours, it's a fun race. You start there, then you go into the night, and then the morning comes and you think you're almost done, but no, you still have 9 hours to go. And then hopefully you see the checkered flag. So we did not this year. We got crashed into early in the race and we had to retire the car. But I really love it. And there's 3 endurance races in the US every year. There's the Daytona, Sebring 12 hours, and then Petit Le Mans back in October. And I looked at my calendar. I'm free for Petit Le Mans, so may do it.
How do you split the driving up? Do you have like 2 or 3 or 4 hour shifts and then just keep rotating? And because you have to be able to stay alert and at least get some rest in between your driving shifts, right?
Yeah, ideally you do 2 or 3 stints. So stint is 45 to 55 minutes. You normally do 2 or 3 and then get the next guy in. And then also after that, you just start to lose a little bit of, focus and it gets hot in the car and you don't have food and it's just, yeah.
Do you sleep at all in between?
Yeah, I sleep really well. So I just go shower, eat, sleep, back.
Sounds like fun, actually.